Okay, this should be part 4 of our practice test for Chapter 3. Let's pick up where we left off. Okay, question number 14. It asks us basically to find all the roots. I did a little scratch work here. I found my P's and Q's and I reduced it down to these possibilities. And then from these 4 possibilities, I went and did my Descartes rule of signs. And I didn't have any sign changes in the given function, so that means none of my real roots are going to be positive. And I have a possibility of 3 or 1 root being negative. Okay, well, looking through this and looking through my multiple choice guesses here, it looks like -1 is a good candidate. I've already eliminated +1 because Descartes told me that I'm not going to have any positive roots. All right, so -1 looks like a really good candidate. And so I went to the calculator here and graphed it and get the glare off the screen. Okay, right there, -1. All right, looks like it's going to work. So I used synthetic division and I divided it. It went in evenly, so that did work out nice. So I definitely found out one of my factors. Okay, and this was what's left over. That doesn't factor so pretty, so I use the quadratic formula and do a little bit of reduction. Be careful how you reduce and simplify. And so I get an irrational. And so I get -3 plus square root of 7, -3 minus square root of 7. Okay, so there is all 3 of our roots. X equal to -1. X equal to -3 plus root 7, X equal -3 minus root 7. Okay, and if we go back to the problem, that should be choice then number D. Okay, I really did an exact identical approach to the next problem. There's really nothing I did different. The only thing that we had to do different on this problem is we had to report our answer a little bit different. So on number 15, I went through the same old schmear. I did my P's and Q's. I got 6 possibilities. Has 3 sign changes, so a good possibility of 3 or 1 positive real roots. All right, this might be helpful to me. Okay, I have no negative real roots. So I know that what I'm going to start off with needs to be positive. So let's go to our graph again and see what that is going to teach us, if anything. And sure enough, it looks like +1 is definitely a 0. So that is what I'm going to use to divide with on problem number 15. Okay, so on problem number 15, I do divide by 1, okay, and I come down here and I get a quadratic with no middle term. Okay, rather than divide again, we're all pretty good at solving quadratics, some sort of x squared thingy. A second order polynomial you should be able to solve by just regular techniques, either quadratic equation or factoring. The way I'm going to factor this one, because I just have 2 terms, is I'm going to factor it or solve it by taking the square root of both sides. Now when I do that, I get an imaginary number, but no problem. All right, so what do we know our roots are? We know our roots are x equal 1. We know our roots are x equal +5i, and we know that x is equal to -5i. Those are our roots, and what the question asks for, he says, okay, express those roots in terms of factors. All right, so if I was to factor my equation and I plug in any one of these numbers, it would make it 0. All right, so here's our original equation, factored properly, then we will get our choice, which is A right here, and that would be the correct answer for that. Okay, last 2 problems. Okay, last problem here. They're talking about how do we use our multiplicity of our zeros to determine some characteristics of the graph. Okay, well, one of my zeros is going to be x is equal to -1/2. That would make this piece right here 0. My other solution is x equal to -5. Now, x equal to -1/2, that occurs 4 times. So that has an even multiplicity. That means that my graph is going to have a touch and turn at x equal -1. All right, now the -5 root occurs 3 times. That's an odd multiplicity. Anything with an odd multiplicity like 1, 3, 5 will cross the x-axis at -5. So what are we going to have? We're going to have a touch and a turn. We're going to have a cross. We are going to have the -1/2 is going to appear 4 times, and the -5 is going to appear 3 times. So our choice there would be multiplicity graph, multiplicity 3. The graph touches the x-axis and turns around. It should be, oops, yeah, A. That is +1/2. That's not going to work. +1/2. That's not going to work. And our last choice, -1/2 multiplicity of 4, touches and turn. X has 5 multiplicity of 3, crosses the x-axis. Where's the difference? Oh, it's actually going to be choice D. Okay, why is choice A incorrect? It doesn't have a cross the x-axis. All right, so the choice is D. Shouldn't have done that one on the fly. Okay, last one, Descartes' rule of signs. All right, so here's my function. There is no sign changes of that function. So if I have no sign changes, I have no positive real zeros. That does not help me scratch the trash. These all say no positive zeros. Okay, bummer. All right, so I plug in -x, and I see I have 3 sign changes. So I'm going to have 3 negative real zeros, or Descartes says I can subtract 2, or any even integer. This is another possibility. So I have a possibility of 3 or 1 negative real zeros. Okay, so 0 positive, 3 or 1 negative, I would put choice C. Okay, and I think you're going to find that the test is literally identical to this practice. So make sure you know how to do this. Use this as a practice quiz. Test yourself. Make sure you know the answers.